want to talk to you about doubt. I have a doubt. I feel it as a knot in my tummy. And I can hear inside my head questioning myself whether to share it with you. It feels risky, and to be honest, I'd much rather just ignore it and pretend it wasn't there. But I want to have an experiment, and I want to try sharing that doubt with you today. Because my doubt is that what if it's not enough just to add to our knowing and to our knowledge? What if we also have to get comfortable with not knowing? And perhaps a way for us to do that is to share what we doubt. This doubt shows up for me working in change. I was working with a client, they were months into a transformation, and things were feeling tough. We were in a meeting where the agenda was full of actions and progress against plans, and something felt off. I could feel that knot forming in my tummy. But did it feel enough to risk interrupting the time, to disrupt the focus? I wonder if you've ever been in those meetings where knowing is prized and time is scarce, and it feels a significant risk to say, I'm not sure about this. Where meetings are designed for clarity and efficiency, and we literally have no time for not knowing. Where individuals feel they have to filter or hold back, perhaps silence themselves rather than share the doubt. I want to reframe our relationship and our habits with doubt. I want doubt to become a superpower, where doubts offer information that tell us something about our present, something that feels under strain, something that feels as though it no longer fits, where doubts offer us critical information faster than our minds can make sense of them, and where we relieve those individuals from the burden of offering something that challenges our status quo. Transformations are often talked about as these grand plans, multi-year strategic outcomes, but they're also about the small shifts that happen between us. When we create an environment that says that we can share what we're worried about as much as we can share what we know. Be the change is actually a call to action for what happens between us. It's about the quality of interaction that allows us to acknowledge as much what we don't know as what we do know. And I'm not talking here about self-doubt, although that obviously also shows up in relation to how comfortable or confident we feel sharing our doubt. I'm talking about doubts that sit bigger than ourselves, that speak to a system or a habit or something that we take for granted that's under strain, a signal of dissonance, that the present no longer fits, something that sits between the present and the future in the liminal space, a space critical for novelty. So what is doubt? Doubt's defined as a feeling of uncertainty or a lack of conviction. And I wonder if I was to ask you if you had felt uncertain or whether you were full of conviction. Certainly, the leaders that I work with speak of skating between certainty and uncertainty, knowing and not knowing, often on what can feel like rather thin ice. So if doubt is about a feeling of uncertainty, it makes it an inherent part of change, an essential part that we feel able to explore and examine. And yet we've learned to deny our doubts. We each have a cultured relationship with doubt. We learned it in our families, in our schools, and in our workplaces. For many of us, we learned that doubts were a sign of weakness, a personal flaw, one to overcome. In organizations that prize knowing, doubts are to be feared. We hold them in until we're clear and confident. And in the blink of an eye, we lose the potential of what that doubt offers. Doubts show up in what keeps us awake at night, in our dreams, and for people like me, knots in our tummies. They offer us information faster than our minds can make sense of them, and certainly faster than we've been socialized to offer them. Someone said to me the other day that doubts rise faster than wisdom descends. I'll let that one settle. Doubts rise faster than wisdom descends. So being able to access our doubt is incredibly important. But the types of doubt that challenge the status quo are really high risk for individuals to offer. And they don't really belong to those individuals. There are risks and doubts bigger than those individuals. The individuals voice something that probably sits that many of us could notice and could make sense of. But we fear retribution, retaliation, maybe we damage relationships or our reputation, so we hold back. We learn to deny the doubt that actually offers us the opportunity. And transformations are fundamentally about changing from one form to another. They require us to doubt what already feels familiar. When I think back to that meeting, when I was with my client, the truth is, I didn't need to take a personal risk that day. The CEO, as we neared the end of the meeting, invited us all to share what was keeping us up at night about this. And he went on to talk about how decisions were being somehow frustrated after they left the decision makers. And he was curious about what was getting in the way. He invited us all to share what was on our minds, what we were worried about when we were thinking about the transformation. He legitimized the time and the space for us all to explore what we didn't yet know. It wasn't an indulgence to explore our doubts. It was a gateway. It was a gateway to us being able to shift how we were with each other, to explore not just what we'd predicted, but what we hadn't predicted, and to say what was it happening between us that were keeping us rooted in the familiar, staying with how we were used to speaking with each other, how we're used to govern, how we're used to allocate resources, because there's a cost to not being able to offer our doubts. History is littered with companies where people haven't been able to say, I've spotted something that no longer feels as though it fits the environment. And I'm not talking percentile points and operating efficiencies. I'm talking missing entire business models. I'm talking missing emerging markets or shifting customer preferences. Being able to speak to those doubts is critical for us to be able to work in uncertain times. But let's be honest, not every CEO or person in power is going to invite us to share our doubts, or who's going to want to explore not knowing. 3 things that you could do to help explore what you don't know. The first is legitimize the time and space in the meetings and agendas that you can influence. Allow yourself to play and practice with not knowing. The second is model taking a risk. Share a doubt about something that you care about, something that will disrupt the habits where you filter or adapt or hold back. And thirdly, don't leave anyone hanging. When you see someone stepping in and sharing something that you recognize actually exists between us, help mine for what is it in that? What's the signal or the pattern that speaks to something here is changing? The knot in my tummy today was about taking a risk. To challenge a norm that adding to your knowledge will be enough. To name something that I doubt. And I wonder perhaps, maybe there's something that is in your minds that you doubt. We need to legitimize the time and space to explore those doubts. We need to model taking that risk. And we need to support and develop the capacity between us to mine those doubts for the patterns of what might yet come. Doubting your doubts is part of this process, but trust me, doubts are your superpower. Thank you.